everyone, welcome back to Kidding Around. My name is Melanie Smith and I am so happy that you are here with me today to talk about another wonderful woman. Today we will be talking about Katherine Johnson. Before we do that though, if you like what you're seeing here and want to follow along with all of Kidding Around's videos, please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and also below each video, click the thumbs up. Thank you very much. Okay, so on to our wonderful woman. Katherine Johnson. Do you recognize her name? She is a woman who contributed greatly to the space program and to getting people into space and also to the moon. She faced lots of hurdles along the way, but she didn't let them stop her. So let's talk a little bit more in depth about her. Katherine Johnson was born in 1918 in West Virginia in the United States. From a very early age, she showed very strong mathematical abilities. She loved math. She graduated from high school at age 14, which is a very young age to graduate from high school, and went on to the West Virginia State College. While she was there, she took every single math class the school offered. After college, she decided to become a research mathematician, which was a very difficult field for a black woman to enter at the time. Nevertheless, she got a job at NASA and she worked as a computer. Back then, computers were people. They were people who computed mathematical equations. So she worked in the colored computers office at NASA because back then, most places were segregated. So blacks and whites worked separately. They used different bathrooms, they used different kitchens. Even though that was the case, she said she never felt segregation at NASA. She knew that it was there, but she said because everyone had to work together and everyone was working towards a common goal, she didn't feel it there as much as she probably would have felt it being in another field. During this time, NASA began to use electronic computers, which are the computers more like the ones that you're familiar with. However, when they used an electronic computer to calculate all of the calculations for John Glenn's first orbit around the Earth, John Glenn, the astronaut himself, asked that Katherine Johnson verify the numbers of the electronic computer, and in fact, he said he would not go up into orbit without her verifying those numbers. So as NASA, and in fact the whole world, became more reliant upon electronic computers, she still kept up with the technology and still was an incredibly influential person at NASA. In fact, she helped to calculate the trajectory on the first flight to the moon in 1969. And when the Apollo 13 mission that was going to the moon was aborted mid-flight out in space, Johnson worked to help set a safe path for the crew's return. So clearly we can see what an influential person she was. In fact, in 2015, then President Obama awarded her the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And there she is receiving her award. As I mentioned, Katherine Johnson helped get our first spaceship to the moon. Of course, we knew things about the moon before people traveled there. But once people traveled there and were able to actually walk on the surface of the moon and bring back samples, we learned so much more. So you can definitely see how important Katherine Johnson's contribution was in actually getting people to walk on the surface of the moon. So let's take a closer look at the surface of the moon just the way that the astronauts could after Katherine Johnson helped them to get there. So here is a picture of a small part of the moon. Looking at it, you will see a lot of craters. They look like holes or divots. If you can see them in this picture, they're actually quite large because this picture is quite zoomed out. The reason that these craters exist is because something at some point was flying out in space, a big rock or an asteroid, flew in and hit the surface of the moon and left its mark. The reason that they're still here and that there are so many visible is because there's no weather on the moon. So there's no wind to blow the sand. There's no rain to wash this away. So this is a great picture of the history of the moon. So we today are going to make our own cratered moon out of aluminum foil. To do that, you'll need a few supplies. You will need a piece of aluminum foil, a black piece of construction paper, a glue stick, a pair of scissors, a white piece of chalk, and a darker piece of chalk. This one's gray. You could use black too. And several different coins. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to make a circle on our foil. I actually am just going to cut it out freehand because I'm all about just eyeballing things. I will make sure that there's a template below this video that you can use if you would like to cut that out and then trace it on your foil and then cut your foil. But I'm just going to cut a circle. Foil is a little bit tricky to cut because it's so thin and it's so easy to tear. So just go slowly and you will do just fine. It also really helps if you can leave your foil kind of flat the way I am. So even if you pick it up, just make sure to keep it even with the table or parallel to the table. All right, there is my circle. That wasn't so hard. Here, let's put that up there so you can see what we're making. Then you are going to take your coins and put your coins down on the surface that you're using for your work. You can put them any way you want. And then you're going to lay your foil over them and you can just gently rub around the coins. Then you can just move your foil around and you continue making these holes and craters. I'm actually going to move my coins around to get a different pattern. The surface of the moon I find so interesting because of the fact that there is no weather there. You know, the footprints that those astronauts left in 1969 are still there. And the footprints that, you know, any other astronaut who walked on the surface of the moon left, they're still there too. It's really an interesting thing. Wouldn't you love to go make your own footprints and see all the footprints of the people who have been there before you? All right, well, as you can see, I am just continuing to kind of rub around my coins, and I'm making all of this fun texture and these fun patterns on my aluminum foil. Once you've decided that your moon is cratered up enough, then take your piece of black construction paper and glue on it. I am just going to guess about, you know, the size of my moon here. It's easier, I think, to glue on the black paper than it is to glue on the moon, because if you're starting to glue on the moon, you might actually accidentally erase some of those divots. So it's not a perfect science. I'm just going to roughly guess where my moon will go once I put it down. And I'm going to try to get that little sliver off. And then I'm going to put my moon on the glue. Once I've done that, it almost is complete, but I'm going to outline it with my white chalk. This is just going to kind of give it some depth. As people look at it, it will just make it look like it's a little bit more 3D, three-dimensional. So it'll look rounder. So I'm going around with my white chalk, and then right outside that, I'm going to go around with my gray chalk. You can use gray here, you can use black. That way, it's just going to trick the eye to make it look a little rounder. All right, almost there. It doesn't have to be perfect at all. So once I have my white outline and then my gray outline past that, I'm going to take my finger and kind of smudge all of those lines, or both of those lines, to just make it look, again, like I said, a little rounder, or a little bit more spherical is actually what I should be saying, because this is going to make it look a little bit more like a ball. And there you go. That's a pretty fast and easy craft, but look at what an impact it has. An impact, isn't that funny? Just like a piece of asteroid hitting the moon, it has impact. All right, so you can tell everyone all about the craters that you know. So now we're going to talk about the phases of the moon. I'm sure that you have had the opportunity to go outside some evening and see the entire great big white ball of the moon in the sky. If you can see the entire thing, that's what we call a full moon. Of course, it doesn't always look full, does it? Sometimes you'll see part of it because the other part is obscured. When we see that, it doesn't mean that part of the moon has disappeared. It's just disappeared from our vision. The whole ball is still out there in outer space. It's just that we can't see it all because the sun isn't showing it all to us. So if you can't see the moon at all, it's called a new moon. And this is what it looks like. As I mentioned, it's still out there. The moon is still out there in outer space. It's just that the sun isn't showing it to us. And then a few days after the new moon, we'll see a waxing crescent. If you live in the northern hemisphere, this is what you see. And if you live in the southern hemisphere, this is what you see. You see, it's the same shape. It's just on the opposite side. And then a few days after a waxing crescent, we'll see a first quarter moon, which is about half the moon. And then a few days later, we see a waxing gibbous, which is a little bit more than half. Then we get to our full moon, which is that great big ball. And then a few days later, a waning gibbous, so it's going away. And then the third quarter moon, which is a half, but it's opposite the half from the first quarter. And then we see a waning crescent. And then it goes back to the new moon, and it just continues. Every 28 days, you will see each one of these moons. So I thought we'd have some fun today, and we'd use some double stuffed Oreos to make some of these moon phases. So the first thing that you need are Oreos. The second thing you need is something to kind of scrape away some of that Oreo cream. I'm going to be using just a dull knife. So I am going to open my Oreo. And if you go very gently, you can usually get all of the cream, or most of the cream, on one side, just like that. So I think the first one that I'm going to do is just cut straight down in half. Now let's look at that. Let's see, what did I just make? Well, it looks like I made a first quarter in the southern hemisphere, or a third quarter in the northern hemisphere. But look, if I just move it around like this, it reverses. I made a first quarter in the northern hemisphere, or a third quarter in the southern hemisphere. All right, let me see if I can make a little bit more difficult one now. Gently open the Oreo. Okay, I'm going to make a waxing crescent this time. So I am just going to cut along here, and then I am going to scrape out all of the other stuff. And of course, just because you're scraping out part of the moon doesn't mean that it doesn't still taste good, right? All right, let me see if I can get just a little bit more scraped out there. And there we go. Well, let's see, now I have a waxing crescent in the northern hemisphere, or a waning crescent in the southern hemisphere. And again, flip it over. Now I have a waxing crescent in the southern hemisphere, or a waning crescent in the northern hemisphere. Okay, I think I'll try one more. Let's see if you can get this one. I'm just going to cut it, and then I want you to look and see what I've done. So interestingly, it looks like I'm still making the same thing. I cut it kind of in the same place, but now I'm removing the other part of the cream. And now we can see, what have I made? I've made a waning gibbous in the northern hemisphere, or a waxing in the southern. And then again, if I flip it, it's the reverse, right? A waxing gibbous in the northern, or a waning gibbous in the southern. So I think that you will really have fun being able to flip these around after you cut them and make them in the complete opposite hemisphere. So talk to your parents about it and see if you can then afterward eat your moons. All right, for our last activity today to honor Katherine Johnson, we are going to build a spaceship. And it's going to be a spaceship that even blasts off, at least just a little. I don't know where it's going. You get to decide where you want it to go. And I really can imagine that one of you out there watching this will someday be figuring the trajectory, just like Katherine Johnson did, of one of our next spaceships. Okay, so the supplies that you will need for this activity are the template to make the outside to decorate your rocket. This is linked below this video. You can click there and print this out. You'll also need a way to decorate your rocket. So you can use markers, you can use colored pencils or crayons, whatever you would like. You'll need a pair of scissors, some scotch tape, a little bit of water, and then you'll also need one of these M&M Minis containers. I also used to do this with film canisters, but I don't know that anybody knows what a film canister is or even where to get one anymore. But these mini M&M canisters work just as well. And then you'll also need some Alka Seltzer. This is something that people can put in water and drink if they've got an upset stomach. It fizzes quite a bit, and it's going to be the thing that makes our rocket go. Okay, so the first thing that you should do after printing out your template is make a design on it. I am going to briefly make a design on this. I'm not going to take a bunch of time, but I am going to make it the Katherine Johnson spaceship. And here I'll put a smiley face there so that we all know that this is Katherine Johnson's spaceship going to wherever you want it to go. Katherine Johnson. I'm sure she must have loved watching on TV the spaceship as it landed on the moon. I can't even imagine what she must have been feeling. All right, so once you have it decorated, and you can decorate it any way you want, you are going to cut out all of these pieces. So this is going to be the cone of your rocket. So again, with everything that we do, nothing needs to be exact. You don't have to be perfect with all of your cuts. This just needs to be close. So these are going to be the little triangles at the bottom of the spaceship. And we're going to cut those out. If you decide you want more than 3, you can print more than 3. If you decide you want only 1 or 2, you only have to cut out 1 or 2. It's up to you. Okay, I'll get that one a little bit closer. Okay, and then this is going to be the outside of your rocket, the main part of it. Okay, so then you cut this off, and then you are going to decorate your M&M canister. So this should be empty, by the way. If you want to eat what's inside, of course, ask your parents first. All right, so I'm going to wrap this around Katherine Johnson. All right, and then just tape it. You can tape it just to make sure that it doesn't fall off. And then with each one of these little triangles, you're going to fold along one side, one edge. In fact, I think I will actually put a little bit of a dotted line on this template so that you know where to fold. It doesn't really matter. This is really just for show, but it still would probably be a little bit easier if I showed you where to fold. So I will do that. But again, it doesn't matter too much. We're just doing enough of a flap so that we can actually tape it down. So I'll tape it right there. And my last one, I am going to fold and then tape. There we go. This is almost ready to blast off. Okay, so now we need the cone of our rocket or our spaceship, right? So we're going to take this triangle piece, and the best way that I have found to make it into a cone is to adjust the bottom. So as soon as you can kind of get that bottom adjusted, then look, you've got a pretty good cone. So once you have that, you can just take a piece of tape, and I like to tape here on both parts to keep it together and then wrap it around. And then I also like to tape up here just a little bit because that makes it a little bit more conical. And then you can put that just right on top there, and look, the Katherine Johnson rocket is almost ready to go. Now we just need some power, right? So let me get these scraps out of the way. And the way that we are going to do this is take off the cone, and then we're going to put some water in here inside. Before I go any further, I want to tell you, you should do this outside, and you should absolutely have your parents' permission and probably supervision before you complete this, okay? So I filled this up about halfway, and then I am going to take an Alka Seltzer tablet, and I am going to quickly, I'm going to put it in there, and then I'm going to quickly shut this and put this cone on top, and then hopefully I told you that this kind of gets fizzy. It'll fizz up in there, and then that gas will eventually pop off the top of this, and it'll go up. That's one of the reasons you should do it outside. You're going to get water all over when this goes up and comes back down. The other thing I would recommend is breaking your Alka Seltzer tablet in half. That's just because it's right about the same size as this tube inside, and so we don't want it to get stuck. It'll be better if it doesn't. All right, so here we go. I'm going to very quickly move as soon as this goes into the water, okay? So it's in the water, I put the top on, and now I wait. And I wait. Oh, and there we go. It lifted off. And you can do this again and again and again. Just dump out the water and use a new Alka Seltzer tablet, and it will continue to pop off just like that. I would love to see any pictures or videos of any of the activities that we did today. Please ask your parents to put those on our Facebook site. And again, if you like what you're seeing here, please follow along with our YouTube channel and click all of the like buttons on all of our videos. Thank you very much. This has been a great time. Thank you so much for helping me honor Katherine Johnson. I hope you've learned a lot, and I hope you've had fun. Thanks so much for kidding around with me. I will see you next time.